Edgewood University. Year 1. Episode 16. Guilty. Trust is a bond with great strength like a bridge. Break it, and it can never be put back together the same way it was. Layla flew into the headmistress's office and landed. "Warn me next time you decide to do that," said Tyler, shaking his head. "Sigh," she whispered. They huddled close, looking around the destroyed office, and Layla had flashbacks of her and Connor fighting. She sighed and noticed a puddle of fresh blood. "Look," she whispered, and Tyler looked. They cautiously crept toward the blood and noticed a trail leading into the next room. They looked at each other, swallowed hard, and cautiously followed the puddles. When they walked inside, Layla gasped, seeing Maya's body drenched in blood and deep scratches, and she hung her head. "Mom!" Tyler exclaimed, running to his mother's side, and saw the deep slash marks in her throat. He sobbed, looked her over, and closed her eyes. Layla stood beside him, took his hand, and leaned on his shoulder, crying. He squeezed her hand, sniffed, and his eyebrows shot down in anger. "Who would do this?" he sneered. Layla shook her head, wiped her face, and hugged his arm. "I don't know. I'm so sorry, Ty." She sobbed, and he rested his head on hers. He wiped his face, sighed, and shook his head. "Well, son, when you kill someone, you shouldn't resurrect them for personal gain. Things can get a little foggy," said Peter, walking out of the shadows and wiping his hand with a rag. Layla snarled, and Tyler moved in front of her, growling protectively. "So you killed my mother after bringing you back?" he growled, and his father shook his head. "No, your mother paid the price for the resurrection. You know the rules. A life for a life," he said with glowing yellow eyes, and Tyler looked at him oddly. Peter looked at his son and tilted his head. "What is it, son?" he asked with concern. "For your eyes? Why haven't they turned blue? My mother was innocent?" yelled Tyler, and Peter made a face. Layla growled and put her hands on Tyler's shoulders. She wasn't going to let Peter near them or hurt Tyler. She bared her sharp teeth and stared at the man with crimson eyes. "Yeah, that's where things get foggy. Your mother was a good wife, headmistress, and mother, but she was far from innocent." Tyler thought momentarily and looked at Layla. She searched his eyes, and he touched her face. "What's wrong?" she asked, and he shook his head. "Nothing." He breathed, rubbed her cheek, and looked at his father. Peter looked at Layla and Tyler, noticed they were in their pajamas, and cleared his throat. "I see I've interrupted you and your girlfriend. Why don't you two find your clothes, and we can have a chat?" "The lockdown has been lifted," he said, and Tyler scowled. "Son, you may be the alpha, but I'm still your father." Tyler growled and walked out of the room. Layla looked at Peter and hissed with glowing eyes. Peter sighed and raised his hand. "Believe it or not, I'm on your side, Miss Holland. Now run along and find your clothes," he said dismissively, and she growled. "Layla!" yelled Tyler, and her ears perked up. She glared at Peter, ran toward the door, and stopped. She looked at the man with glowing eyes. "Believe it or not, I'm not your son's girlfriend. I've already found my hellhound," she growled, and Peter gave her a thoughtful look. "Come on, Lay," growled Tyler. Layla gave Peter a smug look and ran out of the room. Classes are canceled for the day. A mandatory assembly has been called for all students and faculty. All are required to attend. Layla groaned, rolled out of bed, threw jean shorts and a blue shirt on, and slipped her feet into low-ankle sneakers. She grabbed her purse, threw it over her shoulder, and walked into the sitting room. Why did Maya resurrect Peter in the first place? What was she planning? What was he planning? Why did Tyler not come back to Faith's room after they spoke with his father? She sighed and noticed a light brown envelope sitting on the coffee table. She looked around the suite and saw that the place was empty. She must have overslept, and the girls didn't wake her for some reason. She sat on the couch and opened the envelope. She opened the folded piece of paper and saw it was addressed to her. "Ray, meet me at the Shimmering Tree at midnight. Don't be late." Layla smiled and shook her head, thinking the letter was from Connor. He was the sweetest guy under the tough exterior. He showed everyone and made Layla smile, and felt like nothing mattered as long as they were together. She sighed happily, got off the couch, and headed toward the dining hall. She ran her fingers along the smooth granite walls, made a face at a statue, and walked into the cafeteria. She got her tray and sat at the back table, noticing the hall was nearly empty. Where was everyone? Layla finished her breakfast, returned her tray, and headed outside. Strangely, a large group of students were in the schoolyard, huddled over something, and she looked at them oddly, walking toward the group. She made her way through the crowd and gasped when she saw the dead, shimmering fairy. She saw Cody and looked at him sadly. "What happened?" she asked, and Cody shook his head. "No one knows. We found her like this," he said, and Layla looked at the fairy sadly. "Get back!" yelled Peter, running toward them. The students parted, letting him through, and 2 warlock men followed him. He bent down beside the fairy and blew a sad breath. Layla sneered at the man, and Peter gave her a thoughtful look. "Like it or not, I am head of this school now," he said, and she crossed her arms. "Where's Tyler?" she growled. "He's processing the information I spoke to him about. You will see him soon enough," Layla hissed, and Cody grabbed her arm. "He's not worth it, Lay," he said, and she searched his eyes and sighed. She nodded, and he let her go. "Where's your brother?" Cody pointed toward the shimmering tree, and she saw Connor talking to a group of girls. He heard a protective growl rumble in her chest and cringed, feeling sorry for his older brother. "Thanks," she said, smiling, and ran toward Connor. "So, how is it that you just got to this school and you're not single?" asked a blonde-haired girl, and Connor pressed his lips together. "I met the one. This old dog is settling down." He laughed, and the girl looked at her friends and smirked. "I'm sure that girl will only be the flavor of the month, knowing your track record." Connor laughed and ran his hand through his hair. "No, I think I'm done with that. I'm not sure how it works in the witch world, but when a werewolf bonds with his mate, it's a connection for life. We imprint on each other and don't stray," he explained. 2 girls walked toward him, grabbed his arms, and smiled. "But you're Connor Lancer, the man who never settles, the man who believes he's the Dark Lord's gift to women," heard a red-haired girl, sliding her fingertips under his button-down shirt. "So, the rumors are actually only rumors," laughed a brown-haired girl, and the witches laughed. Connor sighed and gently pushed the 2 girls away from him. He noticed Layla jogging toward him and smiled. One of the girls looked at Layla and smirked. She walked toward Connor and touched his face. "What can I do to change your mind?" she purred, moving her face closer to his. He grabbed her hands and led her away from him. "Would you stop? You seriously don't want to piss off my mate," he growled, staring into the girl's eyes with silver ones. "You jerk. I don't want to kiss you," the girl yelled as Layla approached, and Layla looked at Connor. He let go of the girl and gave Layla a frantic look. "Babe, I wasn't trying to kiss her. I was minding my own business when these 3 showed up," he said in defense. Layla looked at the witches and raised an eyebrow. She heard everything with her sensitive hearing and raised her hand toward her boyfriend. The girl whimpered, laughed, and walked toward her friends. "I will be going to the new headmaster with this," she snapped, and her friends hugged her. "Go ahead, like the undead man is even going to care," she growled, and the red-haired girl looked at her with glowing white eyes. Layla smirked, threw her arms out, and flames appeared. She growled, showing sharp teeth and glowing crimson eyes. The witch raised her hands, and a white swirling ball of energy materialized. Connor stood in front of Layla and growled protectively. The girl's eyes faded, and she made a face. He sighed and turned around. Layla looked at him and twisted her mouth. "Babe, I swear, I didn't come on to those girls," he said, and she searched his eyes, listening to his heartbeat. He was telling the truth, and she gave him a thoughtful look. He walked toward her, grabbed her waist, and pulled her against his body. "The only girl I want to kiss is you." He softly growled and pressed his lips to hers. Layla kissed him back, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, and bit his bottom lip. Connor whimpered, and she chuckled. "Damn it, girl," he breathed, and she laughed, throwing her head back. "Take that, witches," she said with sparkling eyes, and he laughed, squeezing her hips. "I can never get enough of you, and we haven't even made it to the good stuff yet," he growled playfully, and she squealed. She bit her lower lip, and he smirked. She linked her fingers behind his head and gave him a thoughtful look. but kissing you is the good stuff." "Yes, ma'am," he said, and she kissed him, biting his lower lip. Especially when you do that," he said deeply, and she gave him an innocent look. That right there." Layla giggled and blew a breath. "So while you were over here playing with the riffraff of the school, did you see what happened to the ferry?" "No, the students were there gathered around it when I came out here. Cody told me someone found a dead one, and I walked up the hill," he explained, and she sighed. Connor rubbed her sides and looked at her in question. "What's wrong?" "Did you see who took over the school?" she asked, eyeing Peter, and he looked at the man. He chuckled, and she leaned back, eyeing him suspiciously. "Yeah, Tyler's resurrected father. He and I go way back." He sighed. "So do we." She growled, and he made a face. She kissed his neck, and he shuddered, looking at her. "You need to stop that shit before I pull you into the woods and have my way with you," he growled, grabbing her butt cheeks and squeezing. Her eyes widened, and she squealed, pushing him away. He stepped back and pulled her against him. He kissed her sweetly, brushed her hair behind her ear, and smiled. "Come on," he said, taking her hand and intertwining their fingers. He led her down the hill and toward Peter. Peter looked at Connor and Layla and chuckled. Layla hid behind Connor's arm and tightened her grip. "Shouldn't you be preying on someone your own age, Lancer?" teased Peter, raising an eyebrow, and Connor laughed. "Shouldn't you be 6 feet under?" Peter sighed, glanced at Layla, and stuck out his hand. Connor shook it, and Layla watched the two men interact. "So what's your plan, Peter? First, take over the school, then Edgewood, then the world?" asked Connor gruffly, and Peter scoffed, shaking his head. "No, not at all. Already tried that plan, and it failed. You saw to that. I've decided to protect my home rather than destroy it this time." Connor scoffed, crossing his arms and letting go of Layla's hand. Layla growled, and he looked at her in question. She made a face at him, shoved her hand in the crook of his arm, and smiled when she found his hand. He chuckled and turned toward Peter. "Is that why you killed Maya? To protect your home?" he asked, and Peter nodded. Layla scowled at the man and shook her head. "Do that and to protect you, Layla, and the other Sparks." "You're lying," she said and wrinkled her nose. Peter gave her a thoughtful look, and his eyes glowed yellow. "Am I?" he asked, and Connor inhaled sharply. "You're not," he said in surprise, and Layla looked at Connor idly. "You see, Layla, werewolves' eyes turn blue when they've killed their first innocent. Mine are yellow, because after my wife resurrected me, I got a clean slate," he explained, and Layla crossed her arms. Connor mimicked her growl, and she shrugged and looked at Peter. "I still don't trust you." "You two will understand soon enough. Trust me, I'm on your side." "Yeah, we'll see about that." Connor growled, grabbed Layla's hand, and pulled her toward the school. "Oh, Connor?" sang Peter. Connor stopped, sighed, shook his head, and turned around. "You know your emotions are tied to the silverback, and if you show the slightest weakness to another woman, as you have done so many times before, you will lose your Hellcat." Connor sneered at the man, snarled, and pulled Layla across the schoolyard. "Connor, slow down," breathed Layla, and Connor slowed his pace. "Don't let that quack get in your head. I get it. Everyone's called you a whore, said you've been a whore, girls throw themselves at you. Okay, so you have an exciting past. Don't let some jerk make you feel different about what we have going on," she said, and he shook his head. He walked, looking straight ahead, and sighed. "No, babe, you don't understand," he said deeply. Layla yanked her hand from his grip and walked in front of him. "What do I understand?" Connor looked at her, shook his head, and started walking. She stood, not moving, and he sneered. "Come on, move," he said, going around her, and she jumped in front of him. "No, not till you tell me," she stated and pushed his chest. "Layla, I'm not in the mood," he growled, and she wrinkled her nose. "So tell me." He sighed, rolled his eyes, gently pushed her, and walked toward the school. She walked after him and looked at him. "Connor, damn it, talk to me," she demanded, and he turned around. She looked at him, startled, and he grabbed her shoulders. "Do you know how hard I've worked to show you? I'm not the guy I used to be. Do you understand? I can't lose you." "Babe, you're not going to lose me," We haven't been together long enough, but I feel we are going to be together for a long time, she said, and he searched her eyes. If I stray, the feline inside you will break our bond, and I will suffer for the rest of my life with a broken heart. He explained, and she stared at him. Then don't stray. You don't have anything to worry about if I'm truly the one you want. He sighed and hung his head. But I do have a human side still. I can still make a mistake. Layla searched his eyes and pulled back. Human or not, you shouldn't want to stray if what you told me is truly the way you feel about me, she said. But I lived a whore my whole life, and I could fuck up and make a mistake, he said, irritated. Don't fuck up. It's not that hard to say no. You don't understand. Well, I can see how far we're going to get during this relationship, she sighed, rolling her eyes. Connor tilted his head. Really? I thought you would at least suggest helping me with this. Well, I'm not the one who is a whore and have to worry about that kind of stuff, now am I? Connor's eyebrows shot down in anger, and Layla scowled, realizing everything had come out wrong. Connor, that sounded way worse than what I meant. I'm sorry. He searched her eyes, scoffed, and hid it inside. Connor, she called and chased after him.